Hello and welcome to the Our Prenup Lawyer podcast, where you and I get to learn more about prenups as I interview professionals from the fields of family law, couples counseling, and wealth management. I'm your host, Libby Garabedian. Let's get started. The information provided in this podcast is prepared by Our Prenup Lawyer for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. The information is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship. This is not legal advice or a substitute for obtaining legal advice from an attorney. A person listening or watching should not rely upon it in any manner without engaging professional counsel. The podcast is intended to communicate general information and, because recorded, may not be current. On this episode of the Our Prenup Lawyer podcast, we have Forrest Woody Mosten. Forrest is an internationally recognized mediator, collaborative attorney, and certified family law specialist who has dedicated his career to advancing peacemaking and access to justice. He is the co-founder of the Mosten Mediation Training Academy, which provides mediation training to professionals around the world. Known as the father of Unbundled Legal Services, Woody has pioneered innovative approaches to make legal help more affordable and widely available. Over his career, he has mediated disputes for families, businesses, schools, community organizations, and faith institutions, while also teaching at leading law schools including UCLA, Pepperdine, and USC. Today, Woody serves clients and trains mediators globally through his fully online practice based in La Jolla, California. Hello, Woody. Thank you so much for being on the episode today. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Elizabeth. It's a pleasure.
Great. Let's get started. So I want to start with Mosten Mediation Training. Can you tell me how you came up with this idea and what it is?
Well, we're talking a long time ago. I started teaching mediation in 1973, and I taught for various institutions at UCLA and in Pepperdine. And in the 80s, started offering courses on my own. And starting in, I believe, around 1990, started offering them in my home in Los Angeles. And I had a whole training room built in my family room. We had 18 desks for people who came from all over the world, and they stayed for a week. That was a human week, not a Zoom week, and continued that way until I relocated to La Jolla. And then after starting here in La Jolla, within person training, probably about 7 years ago, started with online training, and it's gone very well. Thank you.
That's amazing. What was that shift like from being so hands-on in person to moving to Zoom for your trainings?
Being hands-on in Zoom. Just like in working with clients, I don't find that there's a lot of the intimacy that's lost. In fact, while sometimes I may want to put my hand on a shoulder or hand a tissue, and I can't do that over Zoom, I find that it's really much better for people, particularly outside of the United States, who want the training. They don't have to pay the high airfares. They don't have to stay in a hotel. They don't have to leave their practices. When I used to do 5 days of human time, they had to leave their practice. This way, we start in California time at 9:30, and at 2, people can still see clients and do their work while they have 10 Zoom days, 10 4-hour days.
That's great. So really being there to fit to their schedule in a lot of ways.
Well, it fits to Californian schedule and to East Coast. When you're in India or Australia, it's a little more difficult. But I've had some wonderful, wonderful students who take their training in the middle of the night.
So how does someone become a mediator through your program?
They don't do it through my program. We will teach them how to learn skills, how to build their practice, but it's all up to them. There is no guarantee that anyone who takes 1 or 5 courses from me will be a mediator. In fact, most people who take my training don't become mediators. They will take the training, get the skills, put it back into their law or therapy or financial professional practices, but they don't become a professional mediator. That's very hard. And it takes a lot of years and a lot of focus and attention and dreams.
So, if someone already has an established career, like you said, maybe in law, and they're taking your courses and they're bringing this back to their practice, how does it improve their interactions with clients and their practice overall?
In 2 major ways, I would say, Elizabeth. One, they learn skills on how to work with clients, how to negotiate, how to handle meetings, how to deal both theoretically and with their craft in helping negotiate and be much, much more effective and competent. But there's another way, and that is many family lawyers do everything. They go to court, they do prenups, they handle negotiations. I, for example, never go to court. And I find that that brings me more clients because clients want, in my experience, someone who specializes in helping them resolve and be able to prevent conflict as opposed to use court as leverage for negotiation because it can get out of hand and before they know it, there's been retaliation.
So, going off that, what you do outside of the courtroom, can you explain what are unbundled legal services?
Well, I can show you a little bundle of popsicle sticks that I use to show people that there are a number of legal services that are bundled together for full service representation. That's what happens when people hire a lawyer, pay a retainer. By the way, I never use a retainer. Retainers, in my view, are economic barriers to help people get help. So if you look at the various sticks here, we had drafting, we had research, we have negotiation, we have court representation, which I don't do, and gathering facts. And all of these are different lawyer skills and tasks. What happens if clients decide, I want to do some of that work myself and lower my bill? And I want my lawyer to kind of tell me what to do and guide me and coach me. That's what unbundled services is. And there is another name for it called limited scope representation. I like unbundling because quite often I never go to court, and my clients use me as a coach, and I can then work as both a coach for them, and if they find it's too hard to work with the other lawyer or the other party, they can always hire me for full representation, but for me, not to include court.
I see. Okay. So, is that similar to being a collaborative lawyer?
Well, collaborative law is a form of unbundling.
Okay.
I won't put you on the spot and ask you why, Uh, because there's no court in collaborative representation. A collaborative lawyer is disqualified from going to court. So that means all the other services that we're talking about are done except going to court. That makes it unbundled. But the lawyer has a much more active role in collaborative law than they would if the person is not otherwise represented, and I would coach them through their problem.
So how do you bring, through Unbundled Legal Services, how do you bring your years of mediation training and practice to that?
That is a real softball question, Elizabeth. I like it a lot. If someone wanted a lawyer with 30 or 40 years of experience, you answer this question. How much money would they have to pay in a retainer and an hourly rate in your area?
Thousands of dollars.
Maybe tens of thousands of dollars. They can get my experience for an hour of my time for my hourly rate, and that's all. They only pay an hour. Or if they need 2 hours, they get 2 hours. A little like Liberty Mutual. People pay for what they need. And that is a very different approach to paying a $10,000 or $15,000 retainer when it's $750 or $800 an hour to a lawyer, and the lawyer does all the work, so the bill is higher, and people have, where do they get that kind of a deposit? They can borrow it, but this way people get access to someone like me much easier.
Okay, so how does mediation differ from traditional divorce litigation? Or I guess I want to ask, how is it more of a forward-focused approach to divorce litigation?
People are in charge of their own lives, number one. Number two, they're not in court. They can decide what they want, who they want at the table, who they want to help them. I very much like mediation where there are interdisciplinary teams to help. That means therapists and financial professionals, and quite often I'll bring those people in with client permission, of course. The lawyers also can play a different role. Instead of being advocates and adversarial representatives, they can be consultants to the parties to help them with their work, but also helping them stay out of court.
So these professionals that you're bringing in are helping the mediation process run more smoothly. They're helping facilitate communication. Is that right?
Well, let's just say someone's hired a mediator who has a lawyer background. That lawyer, unlike the therapist, does not have 3,000 hours of supervised client training. They may have 0 in order to get a law degree. And there are wonderful therapists in every community to help with children, communication, to work when there's problems of abuse. Just because there are major problems in the family doesn't mean people can't mediate. It just requires a different type of design.
Okay, so it's not someone has to be a certain way in order to mediate. You can, if a family has communication problems, you're going to be there to help them facilitate communication and move forward.
Yes, it's a real opportunity, especially for people who have a low amount of trust, who aren't communicating very well, whose children are in trouble for us to be able to help the family. It's really being a peacemaker. And that is the way I believe the lawyers should be. In fact, my newest book is called Family Lawyer as Peacemaker, is coming out in January.
If couples are seeking out mediation, they don't necessarily want to be adversarial, but how could a prenup or other documents from the marriage help make the mediation process of divorce run a little smoother?
The benefits of a prenup go well beyond planning out a divorce. Making the marriage better is really the best reason to have a prenup. But should the family want to restructure, having the prenup is a guide for anyone, whether it's the court or hopefully the mediation or the collaborative process, help people through it. Not every issue gets done in a prenup. For example, spousal support may not be covered fully. There may be issues about a family home, but not other types of property. Because remember, when people are getting a prenup, they often don't want to negotiate a lot of the details. They just want to be able to get married, keep the romance, and even though their lawyers might recommend a more fulsome agreement, they may not choose to do it at that time.
Have you ever run into a situation where a prenup, maybe because, like you said, certain things aren't addressed in it, that the prenup is contested or a spouse refuses to follow the terms?
Of course, it happens. But I will tell you, my experience is most people follow their agreements. Mediators have a much more positive view of the human condition than many litigation lawyers. I believe people keep their deals, and when they make an agreement, they follow it. When they don't follow it, often we make a new deal. We will modify it. When someone wants to oppose an agreement, set it aside, you can't really do that in mediation. That requires a court. But we can bring in consulting judges or consulting lawyers who might tell you, look, this agreement looks pretty solid. They don't have to follow that recommendation, which is non-binding, but it sure helps save money if you take the advice of someone who's experienced rather than try it out and have paid $50,000 or $100,000 only to hear the same thing later. And if they end up going to court, most of the time agreements are upheld.
Okay, so it's really a blueprint that's going to be followed in most cases.
Yes. And if it's set aside, then they still have to make agreements about the same issues. The children, which you cannot deal with in a prenup, as you well know. They will talk about support, and they will talk about property, insurance, taxes, all the issues in a divorce. So just because there is a prenup, I think is still a reason to go into mediation.
So you mentioned this a couple minutes ago about restructuring. So how can mediation be more about restructuring rather than destroying? Because a couple might have a large part of their future together if they do have children or they have a business that they've built together.
Well, there's an old view that many people still have that when there's a divorce, it's the breakup of a family. I would rather think of it as, for whatever reason, the marriage didn't work. People are then moving on with their lives, and they are restructuring the way they're going to deal with each other. I have several mediations where people actually are in business together. They choose not to have intimacy with each other. They choose not to be married together, but they have a business they can respect each other, and they can keep their their problems in their marriage outside of their business.
So it really is forward focused and it's not about burning bridges. It's not thinking about traditional ideas of divorce where it has to be ugly and hurtful. It
That's
really is.
very rare, Elizabeth.
Mhm.
Um, Not more than 5% of all cases get decided by a judge. Under 5%. That means that 95% are settling at some time. The question is, how do they settle? Do they spend a lot of money and a lot of torn up stomach lining with their with lawyers and courts and saying bad things about each other, or do they do business together? That's what mediation is. It is a way of doing family business.
So, from your experience, what advice would you give to a couple who is considering a prenup?
A prenup. Well, I would do a prenup with a mediator or collaborative lawyers first, um, rather than have, I call them sign them sweetheart agreements, where someone writes an agreement and get with the higher assets or higher earnings, and they want to protect their assets, and they get a lawyer who makes an oppressive prenup and hand it to a fiance and say, sign it, sweetheart. That can cause tremendous resentment, as you well know, and it can actually ruin a marriage. So the way I like to do the prenups is have the parties and the lawyers, along with a triage team, work together in making up the prenup.
So, in that way, it becomes a collaborative process. It's not adversarial and it's not creating any rifts between the couple.
When I work with another lawyer in a prenup, we work out all of the drafting before we ever even give it to the parties. They have worked out the deal. We have worked out the language, so it doesn't have to go back and forth with letters and accusations and a lot of months. We are able to do it much faster and with the marriage in mind. The job, in my view, of a prenup lawyer is to help people have a good marriage.
So, what do you think is key to a successful marriage?
That's tough. I should bring my wife in and she could tell you whether we're doing it. I think listening to each other, being learning how to negotiate, actually, being able to say what's on your mind and understand if you don't get your way. Um, I wanted um, Italian food last night, and my wife wanted uh, Chinese. Is it, we're not going to get a divorce over that. We're going to discuss it. In the same way, are we going to buy a house that we can afford or a house that we can afford that we might outgrow one day? How are they going to raise their children? People raise their own children much like they were raised. It goes transgenerationally. So that means we're different. Some people believe in timeouts. There are actually parents who believe that if you don't um, have a spanking once in a while, you're not helping the children. Well, somehow you got to work those things out and not make one party, one spouse the enemy, one spouse the um, the problem maker. They're both in it. They made their choices,
So, just like your own career, communication and collaboration is essential.
and it never stops. It continues, and when you think you've got everything worked out, something new comes in, and you have to try to make that better.
Great. So, how can listeners reach you if they're interested in connecting?
Well, first of all, they can contact my website. And I have two websites, one for training and one for my practice. My practice is mostenmediation.com. And for my training, it's mostenmediationtraining.com. Easy. They can contact me by phone, 310-721-4291, or go onto my website and send me a little message. You'll find that I answer my own phone. I return phone calls and emails. I find that is the key to any practice. People, if I'm going to a doctor, I want my questions answered. I want the doctor to care about my health, and I like to think my clients know I think about them. I just had a call with Elizabeth from a man who I represented 40 years ago. I have to say I'm sorry, but I also represented his son for his divorce. When he called me, I was very scared that I had to represent his grandson, but he just wanted to say hello. How often do you have clients who care about you, who send you fruit and candy at Christmas time? It's a very nice practice. I haven't been in court in over 3 decades. I will never go again. My clients do better without it. They don't know that. Sometimes they think coming in, if they're not getting a court lawyer, they're not getting a real lawyer. And I happen to think they're getting a client-centered lawyer, a peacemaker.
Definitely. That's wonderful. That's wonderful to have those connections maintained, and that really goes to show how sustainable and equitable your practice is.
It was wonderful hearing from him too. And to hear he's been remarried now for over 35 years, and had some health problems, but he's doing okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. So
Good.
your questions were excellent.
Thank you.